Sorry.
I have a little fun. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Election Day Eve. And I'm really excited to be here with you today, recognizing that 2 years ago, the citizens of Michigan voted overwhelmingly to give themselves the right to vote in person early for at least 9 days before any statewide election. And so I'm pleased to report that our state's first ever early voting period during a presidential election was extremely successful and broke several records. I want to start also by thanking the election administrators all throughout Michigan who met the moment with pride and determination and really ensured we were ready for this early voting, this historic early voting experience. Now, since last Saturday, October 26th, all around Michigan, over 1.2 million voters came out and voted at an early voting center, some waiting in line for up to an hour, not just to get one of these famous I voted stickers, but also to cast their ballot in this historic election cycle. Many of them were new or first-time voters. In fact, one early voting center I visited in Romulus mentioned they celebrated every time a voter declared that it was their first time voting. And many had seen so many first-time voters that they ran out of their first-time voter stickers by the weekend. It was also a cause for celebration. So many early voting locations, including many here in Detroit, where there were 14, had concerts and carnival rides set up outside as people came to vote to celebrate the occasion. And it was also a family affair. One of the things I saw more than anything else was that a lot of voters showed up with their kids, inviting them to witness history, be a part of history, in the hopes of inspiring and preparing our youngest Michiganders and these future voters to inherit our democracy. But most importantly, all across the state, from Houghton to Hillsdale to Grand Rapids to Flint and here in Detroit, I was really happy to know voters throughout our state experienced a smooth and successful and secure process throughout the early voting time period. So congratulations to everyone who was part of it. Now that brings us to tomorrow, Tuesday, November 5th, the last day to vote in Michigan's 2024 general election. Now, as we head into tomorrow, which is the final day of voting, I'm pleased to announce that all the trends we're seeing indicate that we are on pace to see another high turnout election with voters all across this state enthusiastic and engaged. First, between mail-in ballots and in-person early votes cast, nearly 3.2 million Michiganders have already participated so far in this election. That's 44% of active registered voters turning out already before the traditional election day even begins. And that includes more than, as I mentioned earlier, 1.2 million voters who cast their vote at an early voting site. Voters' enthusiasm for early voting was really above and beyond anything we expected throughout the week. And we consistently saw each day over 100,000 or more folks show up to vote. The highest early voting turnout day was yesterday, Sunday the 3rd, with more than 189,000 voters showing up and casting their ballot. And whether they voted in person early or from home via mail or drop box, women cast 55% of the ballots submitted so far. We're also seeing young people engaged throughout the cycle. 2 days before Election Day in 2020, about 12% of people who had voted by mail were between 18 and 30 years old. In 2022, that number was 7%, 18 to 29-year-olds. As of polls closing last night, 12.5% of the total votes cast thus far came from 18 to 30-year-olds, and more than 17% of those who took advantage of in-person early voting were between the ages of 18 and 30 years old. Older Michiganders also represent more than half the votes cast already, with 51.4% of ballots cast total up to this point coming from voters over the age of 60. And 15% of voters who have cast a ballot in Michigan in 2024 did not vote in 2020. So while statewide voter turnout is currently at 44%, and Washtenaw County is leading the pack with 54%, that's 10 points above the state average. We're also seeing high turnout rates in many of our largest counties. Oakland County is also above the statewide turnout rate. They are at 49.8% turnout, and Kent County is at 47.8%, all again above the state average. Ann Arbor has the highest turnout percentage so far of any municipality or township. They are at 60% turnout of active registered voters. East Lansing is second at 55%, and Livonia and Sterling Heights follow. Livonia is at 47%, and Sterling Heights has seen 45% voter turnout so far. Here in Detroit, we're seeing 32% turnout so far. Grand Rapids was at 39%, and Warren is at 35%. The other thing I saw when I was around the state this week was the popularity of these unique I voted stickers that were designed by Michigan artists. There's 10 of them total, and everywhere I went, it was really interesting to see who chose what. But above all, the hugest hit was the sticker that comedian John Oliver called the greatest sticker ever designed, the famous Michigan voting werewolf sticker. Voters are loving them, and we also want folks to know if you are one of those who did not get this werewolf sticker with your mail ballot or at your early voting center, I have good news. As of today, we have delivered these I voted stickers to all of our Secretary of State branch offices all across Michigan. So they're now available for any voter or future voter or just sticker enthusiast to come and pick up at our branch offices. I want to also thank Michigan's clerks and election workers who've done an exceptional job managing the early voting sites, setting up counting boards, pre-processing mail-in ballots, and overall making sure the voting process runs smoothly and securely. All of us owe a huge debt of gratitude to these dedicated professionals, and I'm extremely thankful for their tireless work for the people of Michigan. Now, finally, let's talk about tomorrow. First, any eligible voter who has not yet voted can still do so tomorrow. Polling locations and precincts will be open tomorrow from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. all around the state. And if you are one of those voters who procrastinate and have your ballot from at home and you're voting from home, you can still return it to your local clerk's office or to a local drop box in your community before 8 p.m. tomorrow, November 5th. And even if you aren't registered to vote, you can still register and cast a ballot tomorrow as well with proof of residency. Bring it to your clerk's office before 8 p.m. and you'll be able to register and cast your vote there in one trip. To find your local clerk's office, your nearest local drop box, or your election day precinct, or anything else you need to know for tomorrow, go to michigan.gov/vote. And remember, whatever option you choose to vote, Michigan's elections are safe, secure, and the results will be counted accurately. On that note, let's talk results. I know a lot of people are wondering, when are we going to hear? I know people across our state and in Michigan and all across the country are anxiously waiting to learn the unofficial results of a number of high-profile races. So today we are releasing 3 videos that will walk everyone through exactly what will happen after the polls close. You can see those videos now on our website or our social media channels. And we can expect the first wave of unofficial results to begin being posted after 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. That's because we have 3 counties that are in Central Time, and we wait until all of the polls are closed across the state before releasing any numbers. You can expect to see ballots cast at early voting centers and in person in precincts tomorrow to be among the first numbers released in those early totals. And you will also see, in some cases, ballots that were sent back through the mail or drop boxes, absentee ballots, being included in those totals as well. Those will be the ones that were returned early, and I'm really pleased that in this moment, 82% of the ballots that were sent out have already been returned. So you will see some of those ballot results as well in those early numbers. And while we expect to have the final unofficial results by midday Wednesday, I will be hosting a press conference tomorrow evening shortly after 9 p.m. at Ford Field. And at that time, I will have more specific updates for everyone in terms of what to expect in the post-election period. Now I'm happy to open it up for questions.
Secretary Benson, 4 years ago, we saw an influx of absentee voters, of course, due to the pandemic. And it resulted in some impatience among the community members, and we saw a lot of chaos at TCF specifically. Are there any security measures in place to prevent that this go around?
There are, and I'll say a couple of things on that. First, it is now a crime in Michigan to threaten an election worker in their line of work. Secondly, throughout the pre-processing procedures that we've observed in Detroit across the state, there have been a number of challengers and observers all peacefully observing and staying within the guardrails of their roles to have access to see the process and also have transparency as well. It's gone abundantly smoothly, and I'm really glad for that. I see no reason why we should we should depart from that at all tomorrow or in the days ahead. And I certainly expect and hope that no one will try to disrupt the process. It won't be successful. It will break the law. And we will be there with state, local, and in some cases, federal law enforcement to protect the process, to protect the people in the process, and to ensure that there is justice served for anyone who would break the law in trying to disrupt or interfere with our elections. All that said, I'm really, again, hopeful that we'll see a peaceful election day, both during the voting process and after the polls close. But we are prepared for anything, and we have multiple partners and even have done scenario planning exercises all across the state to be ready for anything that could transpire. The other thing I'll add is that we'll have close to 100 people from this office working throughout the state to be there and be present if anything occurs, whether it be in northern Michigan or the Upper Peninsula, or on the west side of the state, or here on the east side of the state. We'll be ready in partnership with the Attorney General's office and many others to be there and to ensure we're able to either de-escalate or mitigate any potential occurrences. But again, we ask everyone to respect the process, respect democracy, respect the officials who are in the process, and let's have a smooth and secure election tomorrow. Thanks.
Secretary,
Yeah.
Ed White from
Yeah.
the Associated Press. Can you talk about the impact of the early voting and the absentee voting on the how easy or perhaps hopefully easier to process everything? I mean, how much of this that's gone on the last 9 days will be a relief to the clerks and everyone who has to process the ballot?
Yeah, we'll go through a couple of things in comparison to 2020. So in 2020, we had 3.3 million citizens vote before Election Day through primarily mailing in ballots. And in 2020, we saw 2.2 million citizens show up on Election Day. In 2020, our clerks were not able to begin even pre-processing those ballots, those 3 million ballots, until 7 a.m. on Election Day itself. And they did, to great success, actually work very methodically and securely to process and tabulate those ballots alongside the Election Day they were administering. And as we went throughout the day, our highest turnout election in state's history, we still had those unofficial results ready and available for everyone by midday to late in the day on Wednesday, within 24 hours of the polls closing. So this year, it's a little bit different and a lot more efficient. This year, those, in this case, currently 2 million ballots that have been sent back through the mail or at drop boxes, with 1 million of those early votes already being tabulated and voted at early voting centers. Those 2 million have, many of which have been returned early, 82% are already back, and as of Monday, October 28th, clerks had the ability to begin pre-processing and feeding those ballots into the machines as well. So that puts us in an extremely good position to handle any late-coming ballots that are returned on Tuesday or today, which will be processed and tabulated just as they would if they were returned at any other time, to go through that, but we'll have a much smaller number of those ballots this time and much higher capacity to efficiently and securely and accurately process and tabulate those ballots tomorrow. All that to say is we'll see how things unfold, but I'm very optimistic and hopeful that we'll have those unofficial results in sooner than we did in 2020, and that is part of what I'll be able to update everyone on at 9 o'clock tomorrow night.
Secretary?
Yes.
Jim Shudo with CNN.
Yeah.
As you know, there's an enormous amount of misinformation already circulating, a lot of it with intent, some from inside the country and outside the country, and I expect more here after the election and on Election Day. How do you plan to push back against that and communicate what is fact versus fiction?
Yeah, well, a number of things. First, in this moment, every citizen has a responsibility to be a critical consumer of information, because the biggest advantage our adversaries have when trying to create confusion and chaos and even fear is to fool us into believing what they're telling us is true. And so all of us can be that first line of defense of not being fooled by seeking out multiple sources of information, by going to websites like the one we've set up, michigan.gov/electionfacts, where you'll see conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory consistently debunked with facts. What we've also done this year is partner with faith leaders, business leaders, community leaders, sports leaders, and many others to equip them and train them with all the information as well, so that if they get questions or if they want to proactively address misinformation, they can do so from the pulpit or from wherever it is that they have their sphere of influence. And then finally, we'll be working on social media and also throughout the day to continue to respond to anything that metastasizes or grows in a way that could get out of control and lead to more misinformation happening throughout the day, like if there are videos posted and things like that. We're ready. We've done scenario planning exercises all around the state, like many of my colleagues around the country have done. And for that reason, I feel like we've got good procedures in place if anything does transpire in the next 24, 48, 72 hours. But none of anything we can do. We're committed to transparently and proactively providing all the data and information we can on websites and through trusted voices and others. But the first and last line of defense is always the mind of our residents and the mind of our citizens. That's what people are trying to infiltrate. And so don't let them. Become smart, or be smart, critical consumers of information. Ask questions. Question everything you see on social media. Don't assume anything that you're seeing from a source other than a trusted voice or election official has truth until you cross-check it with other sources of information. And then know that there are people in Michigan prepared to answer questions all across our state as they arise and debunk quickly anything that occurs. And we'll certainly be working with all of you here today, if you hear something or we hear something, to get the truth and trusted information out as soon as possible.
Secretary Benson, hi.
Yeah. Hi.
Judy Chang with
Yeah.
ABC News, hi. Two quick questions. One is, of the 15% of new voters,
Yeah.
do you have any insights on them, gender, race, or
Not at this point.
geography?
No, we haven't done a deep dive. We could probably do a deep dive into those numbers. But even I was even asking, do we know how many voted early versus absentee? We just haven't pulled that data yet.
Sure. And
Yeah.
then the other bigger question is, we know that you are subject to a good number of lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
How many of them have been, sort of disposed of? How many are still operational? And what, if anything, is going to impact what's happening tomorrow?
We have a great team in partnership with the Attorney General and other partners to handle any lawsuits that come our way. The vast majority we've seen, including some of the most recent ones, are truly meritless. And so we see them primarily as efforts to inject allegations or false allegations into the public narrative, not to necessarily win in a court of law. So we've seen a lot of them dismissed. We've seen some dismissed and refiled the next day just to keep the story out there. We're trying to help everyone see that these are, as we've said consistently, oftentimes lawsuits or a PR strategy that are masquerading as lawsuits to try to create fear or cast aspersions or seeds of doubt on the integrity of our elections. So we anticipate this will continue in the days and possibly weeks ahead, and we'll work to both stay in front of them and help equip everyone with information about why we may believe a particular lawsuit is meritless, what it's actually trying to get people talking about or thinking about or worried about, and then whatever we've done to put in place to protect against any types of.
Just for our reporting, do
false
you know sort of
aspersions.
a sense of numbers? How many have been filed? How many have been dismissed?
We do refer to them as numbers because they just come so quickly. There's
Right,
case
right.
1, RNC 6, RNC 7, but we can get you those specific
Sure.
numbers. Yeah.
Secretary, could you
Yeah.
speak to a little bit more about the physical safety of polling locations and our poll workers as well? And what that safety kind of looks like? Are we, arming poll workers with pepper spray? What is that?
We have not armed poll workers with pepper spray, nor would we, but at the same time, we do have a connection to every poll worker in the state to make sure if something arises, we can find out about it quickly. Many of our election workers have gone through de-escalation training, and we also will have 100 people from our office all throughout the state and here at Cadillac Place to be able to be on hand and rapidly respond or de-escalate anything that might erupt or occur throughout the day. We are very aware that that anxieties are running high and that a lot of people are worried about the potential for disruptions or worse on Election Day. So we're working with law enforcement to, again, make sure people are safe and feel safe, both voters and election workers. And we want everyone to know you'll be safe when you come to vote tomorrow. And if anything does erupt or occur, we'll be there to quickly ensure it is contained and doesn't escalate beyond any particular isolated incident. And we'll be updating all of you. We'll be having calls with the media throughout the day. So as you're hearing things and we're hearing things, we'll stay all in close communication about both what might be occurring, what we've done to mitigate it or de-escalate it, and what any other response might be.
So we've seen some videos of poll workers being attacked by voters who are not following rules. Can you just sort of address the do's and don'ts, things you should not wear to a polling site?
Yeah.
Campaign literature that should not be passed out.
Yeah, I mean, I would caution anyone, I appreciate everyone's enthusiasm about this election and how passionately people feel about their particular candidates, but campaigning or even wearing insignia that would suggest campaigning for a candidate within 100 feet of a voting location is against the law in our state, and so we want people to have the conversations you want to have about candidates outside that safe space. But once you get within 100 feet of a voting location, that's the time to be a voter. We always encourage people to not wear things that perhaps would suggest that they're supporting a candidate, because that could be seen as campaigning for candidates within a polling place. Secondly, our election workers are professional, they are bipartisan, they are committed to doing their jobs with integrity. And so work with them to ensure the sanctity and the security of our elections and our voting procedures in places, not against them. We will be on hand if there are disruptions that arise to protect our election workers, but really there's no reason, there's nothing to accomplish by creating a disturbance in a voting location tomorrow or any other point. And so we would really ask everyone to respect the process, respect our election workers, but no, we will be there swiftly to ensure accountability if anyone does go beyond the bounds of what's permitted.
Secretary, there are some efforts to change the recount rules ahead of this election. Can you give us an update on where those efforts stand and what standard will be used for next year?
We can get that to you. I think we're focused on just tomorrow right now, but if and when we get to a recount process, we'll have more conversations about that and what the procedures might be.
Another question, as far as the Michigan voting dashboard goes, do you have any data in terms of traffic to the website, on what parts of the state people are seeing it viewing it from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have not pulled that data, but we can. And we've been focused on the election data as opposed to the traffic of the website, but we'll certainly be able to, I believe, get some of that information to you either now or in the near future.
Secretary,
Yeah.
last week there was a pretty big story out of Ann Arbor about a
Mhm.
student who had voted illegally, didn't have the proper citizenship to vote. We're not sure if it was a mistake or what happened. Can you talk in terms of that, the efforts and measures that are in place to ensure accuracy and transparency throughout tomorrow and the early voting count?
Yeah, when people choose to break the law, whether they're lying or they're producing false documentation, whether they are falsifying signatures, we will catch it. Voting is a public record, and those public records of who votes in Michigan and elsewhere have been scoured over many times in past elections. And to that point, it really reemphasizes how this incident was an isolated incident. And at the same time, you will see not just swift justice, as you saw here. I'm grateful to the swift actions of the clerk and the local prosecutor, but also very serious consequences for this particular individual. And we'll see how the facts bear out. But that said, we've been working with election workers to continue to ensure the rules are followed, the laws are followed, and we'll be having conversations also with lawmakers, perhaps after the fact, to explore any other things we want to do moving forward to continue to assure folks about the sanctity and security of our process. But we've not seen anything else erupt, and we're hopeful and confident that we'll be working with our election officials to continue to maintain the integrity of the process.
Secretary
Yes.
Benson, Nathan Lane from Reuters.
Hi, Nathan.
Hi. There's been a lot of speculation, concern that former President Trump, based on his rhetoric, based on his past actions, that he'll declare victory early, especially here in Michigan, if it, close in the balance. Do you have a specific plan to sort of counter that, as well as anything that follows, like last cycle, claims that there's dumping ballots at the TCF Center, which led to some of the chaos that happened there.
Mm-hmm.
So in that kind of a scenario, if it happens again, do you have a specific plan about something to do differently this time?
Yeah, well, I'll say a couple things. First, candidates don't get to decide who wins elections. Voters do. And so we will keep reminding folks of that truth. And candidates certainly can say and will say whatever they want to say. It doesn't change the facts. It doesn't change the tallies of the votes that are cast on paper ballots that will be audited after the fact and securely tabulated throughout the election to ensure the accuracy of the results, whatever those results may be. We hope and expect and ask all candidates to respect the will of the people and respect those results and not claim something is true when it's not. But we'll be there just as we were in 2020 to, with the truth on our side, reiterate what's actually happening, even though candidates and their supporters may try to create confusion around that reality. That's why for the next week and beyond, we'll be here to consistently, as we were in 2020, debunk the misinformation or debunk conspiracy theories as they may arise. And we ask for your help too, frankly. When you I mean, in 2020, it was media supplies that were being brought into then TCF Center that were falsely alleged to be ballots. They weren't, and I was grateful for friends in local media here who quickly said, no, that was our stuff, that wasn't ballots. We'll have to do that again, potentially, but truth and transparency are on our side, and I'm hopeful that the number of people who will be observing, and challengers as well, within, in this case, Huntington Place, who will be on hand to hopefully also speak that truth and not cast false aspersions on the process, will stay within the lines as well. But it's one of the things we'll be keeping tabs on as things unfold in the days ahead, to see what is it that could be used, what small kernel of misinformation could metastasize into something much larger. I think the one thing I would say is we've all been through this before. We've seen how completely innocent things can be misused to spread false aspersions about our election. So let's all be vigilant and not allow that to happen and try to negate it as soon as it does. We'll certainly be doing our part, and hope citizens can also join us too in helping us to spread the truth and not allow conspiracy theories to foment.
Can you mention the large numbers just one more time? I think you said nearly 3.2 million
Correct.
people have voted either in person
Or absentee.
or absentee.
Mhm.
And of the 3.2, 1.2
Correct.
came
We're
out
early in person.
early in person.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. And we'll have a release that we can get you right after this with all those numbers in writing. Yeah, yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
Yahya Bugazala with CNN. I know there's going to be some eyes on Warren tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Just anticipate.
A lot of them. Yeah. A lot from our office.
Yeah. Do you have any updates as far as what you're expecting or when those results might be in as far as Warren and broader across the state? Do you know of any places that aren't planning to count throughout the night and potentially wrap up at a certain time and pick up in the morning?
We don't right now know of any places that would in any way not, count until the count is done, but we'll have more of an update on that at 9 o'clock when we'll know more. In Warren, it's looking like anywhere between 22 and 25,000 ballots will be processed and run through the machines beginning tomorrow. So we'll keep tabs on that throughout the day to see how that's proceeding and if any others come in late. And that's another thing we'll be able to have on hand at 9 o'clock to know. We will have members from our office there with updates, and I'm sure many others will be there too. I'm hopeful that the Clerk Ferlini, the county clerk, has also said he will be releasing partial results as they come in. He won't wait till every community delivers results before releasing them. So we'll see how things play out. I think the good news is there are lots of eyes on it, so we'll all be able to know exactly what's happening, when it's happening, and what to expect. Any other questions? So we'll be having I'm here and available. If you have any additional questions in the hours ahead, we'll be having another press conference tomorrow morning at my polling place at 10:30. Sorry, Angela, if I wasn't supposed to announce that, but I did. Sorry. And then we'll have our 9 o'clock. So just so you know, and then we'll have our 9 o'clock, or shortly after 9 o'clock, we'll have a press conference at Ford Field to wrap up the day. Thanks, everybody, and let us know if you have any more questions. Take care.